Hey guys, I'm Gary from Lost in the Ozarks. In this video, I want to show you some amazing waterfalls in the Arkansas Ozarks. In this video, we'll give you information on each trail and general directions with GPS coordinates to get to the trailhead and other important waypoints. I'll also place links to where you can download many of the GPX files to the locations so you can upload them into your GPS receiver. These can help you stay on the trail. They're especially useful because cell phone reception is spotty to non-existent in many of these areas. Now before we get to the waterfalls, be sure to leave us a like and hit that subscribe button, and also hit the notification bell so you'll be notified when we upload new videos. Okay, now that all that's out of the way, let's get to the waterfalls. The first waterfall on our list is Big Creek Cave Falls. This trail is actually an opportunity to visit two cave waterfalls on the same trail. Big Creek Cave Falls is located in Newton County, Arkansas. To get to Big Creek Cave Falls from the north, take Highway 7 south from Harrison through Jasper. About 1.6 miles north of the junction with Highway 16, look for the sign to Newton County Road 6840. That sign will be on the left side of the road. The road looks more like a turn onto a farm road that would be private property, but it is a county road. After a few hundred feet, the road will open up. If coming up from the south, take Highway 7 about 1.6 miles north from the Highway 16 junction, and the sign will be on your right. You have to do several water crossings on this one, so bring water shoes or a towel to dry your feet. Big Creek Cave Falls flows directly from an opening in the side of the bluff. This waterfall seems to run even in drier times. You'll need to cross the creek and make a fairly steep climb up a short trail to get to the bottom of the falls. Once you leave Big Creek Cave Falls, cross back across the creek and take the main trail a little further upstream, and you'll come upon a trail to another cave waterfall, Wolf Creek Cave Falls. This one flows out of the cave entrance, cascading down a shallow stream before it returns underground near the side trail to the falls. There are ample opportunities for photos along the creek, so don't forget your camera. There are many other things to see too. Old homesteads, abandoned cars, and there's even an abandoned mine shaft. This trail is 3.7 miles total, and it's only got about 200 feet of elevation change, so it's a relatively flat hike compared to some of the other waterfalls you'll see on this list. Bowers Hollow Falls is located in the upper Buffalo Wilderness along the Buffalo River. This is another trail that gives you the opportunity to see multiple waterfalls in one trip. But be warned, many people have written reviews saying they couldn't find the falls. But you're in luck, because I'm going to give you the GPS coordinates to it all. The road to reach the trailhead for Bowers Hollow Falls is rough, and the last portion to the place we parked can most likely only be made in a high clearance vehicle if there's been any rain at all recently. But there's a main parking area at the point you turn off the gravel road, and it only adds about a mile to the hike. You can also turn right at the spot we parked and park at the K Park Cemetery. You may find this listed online as the trailhead, but most of the reviews I saw that stated they couldn't find the falls started their hikes by parking there. To reach the trailhead, turn off from Highway 21 onto County Road 5. The first part of the road is rough and steep. Continue on this gravel road for about 8 miles to Forest Road 1410 on the left. Follow Forest Road 1410 for a few miles, and parking will be on the right. You can go through the parking lot and follow this road if you have a vehicle that can make it, and the road will turn right with a side trail to the left. There's room to park a couple of vehicles here. This is where we started the trail. A short distance along the trail, there's a fork in the trail. Where the trail splits, stay to the right. It's fairly easy to follow the trail, but the GPS coordinates would definitely help. You can follow a small stream you cross on the trail downhill to the top of Bowers Hollow Falls. Now we found that if you follow the right side of the stream that forms the falls about a quarter mile, there's a break in the bluff line where you can scamper down and hike back below the falls. Now you have to climb over some large rocks and logs, but you can get there. If you want to continue and see more waterfalls, go back to the main trail and continue further another couple of miles, and you'll come to Ken Smith Falls. There's a cascade waterfall before the water tumbles over the rocks 72 feet below. Head back up to the trail and continue to McClure Falls, another tall waterfall tumbling over the side of the bluff. If you follow the trail over McClure Falls a little further, you can find a break in the bluff where you can climb down below Ken Smith Falls, then head up the side stream to catch McClure Falls from below. Now the total distance for this hike, if you complete all three, is around 7 miles. 8 if you park at the entrance from Forest Road 1410. There's about a 600-foot total elevation change, and my rating for this trail is challenging due to the steep terrain and length of the trail if you see all three. Cecil Cove Loop Trail follows along Cecil Creek with several water crossings. From the trailhead and parking area, the trail descends steadily down to Cecil Creek. The trail then follows along the creek with several water crossings of Cecil Creek. Depending on recent rains, the creek may also be dry, or you may get wet. Immediately after you cross the creek for the fourth time, look to the left and you should see a faint trail leading uphill that will take you to Thunder Canyon Falls. Thunder Canyon Falls is a narrow slot falls. The bedrock around the spot where the falls enter the narrow canyon is extremely slick. I found that out when I was attempting to approach the falls for a better photo. One minute I was gingerly walking upright, the next second I was on my back. My hair was wet on the back of my head, letting me know how close I came to a nasty head injury. Remember, many of these places are miles from help, and cell phone reception may be non-existent. Please use caution when visiting these areas. I was lucky that the only thing bruised was my pride. As of January 2022, the trail is no longer a loop trail. The National Park Service website announced that the trail is closed from Johnson Cemetery to Irby Road due to a large landslide. The area is still unstable, so the Park Service closed that portion of the trail to Irby Road for the safety of the public. This is yet another trail where you can visit multiple waterfalls on one trail. This is another of the waterfall trails that are located in the Upper Buffalo Wilderness. In fact, if you visit Bowers Hollow Falls, you pass the small trailhead sign on the road as you're driving in. You also pass by the trail to Whitaker Point, commonly known as Hawksbill Crag. Many people visit Whitaker Point because it's popular on the internet and simply don't even know about these trails. The trail begins beside County Road 5 and descends into the valley to follow the creek that these falls are located on. As you reach the creek, there's a fork in the trail. Turn right and take a short hike down to Amber Falls. This is a moderately tall and wide waterfall depending on recent rainfall. There's a pool below the falls that you can cool off in during hot weather. As you leave Amber Falls, go back to the fork in the trail and take it to the left along the bluffs. The trail slowly descends back to the creek bed, with several small cascade waterfalls along the trail. You can step out onto the bedrock above the falls for a view down to the creek below. Please use caution as the rocks can become slick. Continue until you see the trail descend the bluff and you can climb down below the falls. Caution is advised here too. The trail down is fairly steep and can be slick and muddy. Once you get below the falls, it becomes apparent why it's got its name. 2 shafts of water flow from slots in the bedrock to create a stunning double waterfall. But don't climb back out just yet. There's another beautiful waterfall that most people miss. Take the trail back toward where you came down to the creek. Keep walking to the creek coming in from the right. Climb over some rocks and you'll find Owl Falls, a gorgeous cascade waterfall that many people miss visiting while they're here. But it is well worth the little bit of extra effort to see. The Lost Valley Trail is an easy to moderate trail located in Boxley Valley near Ponca, Arkansas. This is a high traffic trail with plenty to see. In my opinion, the gem of the trail is Eden Falls. These falls flow from a cave in the bluff and cascade to the base of a box canyon to form Clark Creek. Some adventurous people even take the 200-foot crawl into the cave where the waterfall comes out of the bluff. There's a large room that opens up once you get inside with a waterfall inside the cave. Be advised that to enter the cave, the Park Service recommends you take 3 sources of light and be prepared to get muddy and wet if you want to get into the cave beyond the entrance. Also be sure and check the weather, as water levels can rise quickly inside the cave from unexpected rains, even though it may not be raining at the park. Climb down into the creek and see Cobb Cave, a bluff shelter that was used by humans for shelter for thousands of years. There is also another spot earlier in the hike where you can see a small cascade that is tunneled through the bedrock and flows out of an opening in the bluff. Signs all along the trail post information on the geology of the area and other items of interest. ELISE Falls is another slot waterfall that is located in the Smith Creek Conservation Area. The trail descends over 500 feet down to Smith Creek. As you descend, you'll see a sign for ELISE Falls and a trail that turns left off the main trail. This trail is steep, but it is downhill, so not a problem on the way down. When you get to the creek, you'll need to cross because there are some deep pools and rock bluffs which you can't get around on the left. You'll walk a short distance and see a small stream entering Smith Creek across the creek. Walk into this slot canyon about 75 yards and you will see the falls. Once you've spent some time at the falls, it's decision time. You can climb back up the steep trail you came down on, or you can follow the trail and loop back along the creek. This way will add several miles to the hike, but you will get to see lots of other sights along the way. The trail loops back and comes back to the creek at a small wooden bridge. Take the main trail back out, or you can continue down the trail a few more miles to see more amazing sights along Smith Creek. There's a sinkhole, a spring, and more cascading waterfalls along the creek to enjoy. You could easily spend an entire day along this trail exploring. I debated whether to include this trail in the video. I would rate this trail for experienced hikers due to the complex conditions you will encounter, including the needs to use ropes to climb once you reach the waterfall that flows from the bluff into the creek. There have been a number of wilderness rescues and one death that I'm aware of on this trail in the first half of 2022. This trail begins at the back of the parking area for Kyle's Landing along the Buffalo River. The trail is fairly flat along the river, but once you enter the creek, the trail crosses the creek numerous times. The rocks are smooth and can be very slick with any humidity. There are also places you need to slide along the bluff using only a small ledge if you want to keep dry. On our trip, I had a hip injury a few days earlier, so I wasn't confident in my ability to safely climb the ropes. I waited at the waterfall while our group continued up the bluff to see the Eye of the Needle and the caves at the top of the bluff. This trail can be dangerous, so do your research if you plan to try to make this trek. What about a lovely waterfall that you can drive right up to? Well, Falling Waterfalls is right beside the road with a nice parking area. Falling Waterfalls is located in the Richland Creek Wilderness off Highway 16 near Ben-Hur, Arkansas. This is a short but quite lovely waterfall when there have been rains in the area. I've been here on numerous occasions and have never seen it without water running. There is a large pool below the falls that is popular for swimming in the summer. The road to the falls is well maintained, so you should have no trouble getting there even in a passenger car. In fact, you can visit another popular waterfall in the same area that's right off the same road, known as Six Finger Falls. Keep driving along the road to Falling Waterfalls a little over 3 miles and you'll see a small pull-off on the left with a faint trail leading down to Six Finger Falls. Over the eons, water has eroded the bedrock to resemble six fingers where water flows through slots eroded into the bedrock in Falling Water Creek. You can walk out onto this rock formation when water levels are low. It is an amazing sight to see how water can erode rock as it flows over it. You also don't want to miss Fuzzy Butt Falls down a short trail in the rear of a box canyon. Cross over Six Finger Falls and look for the trail heading downstream. You will come to an entrance to a box canyon after a short distance. Walk into the entrance and the small canyon rises above you on all sides. When there's been rain in the area, the waterfall will be directly ahead at the back of the small canyon. The trailhead to Keefe Falls is a little over 3/10 of a mile past Six Finger Falls on the right. There's a place to pull off Falling Waters Road to the left. Keefe Falls is in a box canyon similar to Fuzzy Butt Falls. The falls are 78 feet high, so it is one of the taller waterfalls in the area. The trail is an out and back trail of just a little over a mile total. The scenery along the trail is absolutely amazing, with towering bluffs on one side and a creek on the other. The trail enters the canyon and ends at the falls. This is one you need to wait for rainfall or visit in the rainy season. The day we were there, we saw only a trickle of water coming over the falls onto the rocks below. If you have the time and the weather's been wet, this one should be on your list, especially if you're in the area and prepared for a short hike. For a unique waterfall, it's hard to beat Glory Hole Falls. The trail to this oddity of nature is a little over 2 miles with about 550 feet of elevation change. You cross a creek on the trail which eventually empties through a hole eroded into the rock before continuing downstream. The parking area for the trail is located right along Highway 16 near Ozarks, Arkansas. The trail to get below the falls can be slick, so use caution as you go around the short bluff to get below the falls. Depending on recent rains, the water flowing through the Glory Hole can be either a trickle or a torrent. Either way, this is one that I had on my list for a long time before I was able to visit. The trail to Hemmed-In Hollow Falls is located just outside Compton, Arkansas. This one is the granddaddy of them all. It's the tallest waterfall between the Rockies and the Appalachian Mountains, at 209 feet tall. The trail down into the valley, which is not far from the Buffalo River, is a little over 5.5 miles total, with over 1,200 feet of elevation change. This trail is challenging to complete, to say the least. Many people who float the Buffalo River stop where the creek enters the river and hike upstream to Hemmed-In Hollow Falls because the trail is such a challenge coming down from the top. The trail is steep and can be slick from recent rains, even days later as water seeps from the bedrock. But when you stand below the falls, you see why people are so willing to make this hike. In fact, about halfway down, there's an overlook of the hollow where you are almost level with the falls and you can observe them from across the hollow. I will say this is one of the most challenging of all the waterfalls on this list, and also the one I was most happy to complete. The trailhead for Kings Falls is on Madison County Road 3500 near Witter, Arkansas. The trailhead is on a gravel road that can be rough. Just go slow and you should have no trouble getting here in most vehicles. The trailhead is beside the creek and the trail is only a little more than a half mile. This is an in and out trail that runs beside the creek. It has a small bridge but otherwise is mostly level, with some small rock bluff shelters and cascades along the way. Kings Falls is not tall, but they flow into a pool below the falls that is around 8 feet deep, perfect for cooling off on a hot summer day. The trail runs alongside private property, so if you decide to visit, please be mindful of the landowners and don't trespass. Just stay on the trail and you'll be fine. Lile Falls is found along County Road 79 that leads to the Irby Campground on the Buffalo River near Jasper, Arkansas. This one may be a little hard to find since there's no parking area, only a slight wide spot in the road. When we visited, the trail was not very well worn, so it's a little hard to follow. However, if you follow the creek downstream from where you pull over, it will lead you to the top of the falls. This is a pretty cascade falls of around 30 feet or so tall. Once you get to the point above the falls, you will see that the Buffalo River Trail crosses the creek at the top of the falls. Follow the BRT downstream a bit, and you should see a spot where you can climb down to get below the falls. You can then follow the creek downstream for a short distance, and you'll come out on the banks of the Buffalo River. This is a beautiful area with scenic beauty everywhere you look. Magnolia Falls is off Highway 21 on County Road 6 near Deere, Arkansas. This is another one where you get multiple waterfalls on one trail. The trail is close to 4 miles total if you visit all 3 falls. The other falls in the area are Woodboys Falls and Hadlock Cascade. Follow the trail until you see a marker and a small trail leading to the left off the main trail. Follow that trail for a short distance and you'll arrive at Magnolia Falls. This is a beautiful waterfall that flows over a rock outcrop, then flows over another drop a short distance downstream. This is the top of Woodboys Falls. To get to the bottom of Woodboys Falls, you need to head back to the main trail and follow it to the end of the bluff line. There should be a faint trail leading to the left around the bluffs. Just follow around the bluffs to get below Woodboys Falls. You can follow the creek downstream to see Hadlock Cascade also. There are many scenic photo opportunities on this hike, and the trail to this one is not one that is typically overcrowded. If you feel particularly adventurous, you can follow the trail downhill into the Bowen Gulf, but we didn't make it down there on our trip. This hike is relatively short and suitable for the whole family. To reach the falls, turn right off Highway 43 on the Newton County Road 2660 just outside Compton, Arkansas. This is a typical gravel road, rough but passable for most passenger vehicles. Travel about 2 miles on the gravel road and you'll see a spot for parking just before you cross the creek. Park here and walk a short distance down to the creek on the road. The trail will be visible on your right. From here, it is a very short distance to Page Falls. Depending on rain in the area, it may be a trickle or a torrent. There's a pool below the falls, and there are also huge boulders around the falls which have passages through them where the kids can play. Climb back up to the trail and travel a few hundred yards further downstream to Broadwater Hollow Falls. Broadwater Hollow Falls is a higher waterfall than Page Falls, and it cascades into the creek bed below. Follow the trail further, and you'll see a sinkhole cave along the trail, which is closed to protect the bats. And there's also a spring that flows from the side of the bluff into the creek. Even though it isn't the tallest on the list, this is one of my favorite trails due to the sheer number of waterfalls and the scenic beauty of the trail. This is one you would need to do some research to find because there isn't a sign showing where the trail begins, only a gravel pull-off on the side of Highway 21 near Deer, Arkansas. The first section of the trail leads you through a grown-up area with many thorny briars. Eventually you'll see a marker denoting where the trail begins the descent to the creeks through a pine forest. As you get lower in elevation, the predominant trees become hardwoods, and you know you're getting close to the creek. As you reach a fork in the trail, you will almost immediately spot your first waterfall. This is a short fall, and I couldn't find a name in my research, but it is quite lovely with a small azure pool below it. Following the creek downstream along the trail, you will see bluffs, streams that run into the creek, and you'll run into a side creek that you'll have to cross. We were able to cross without water shoes even though there had been some rain in the previous 24 hours. But don't cross just yet. First, you should follow the trail upstream along this side creek for about 50 yards, and you'll see another waterfall. This one is around 11 feet high, falling on the rocks below and forming a small pool. Now you can head back downstream to cross the creek and continue to Paradise Falls. From this point, the trail goes higher following the bluff, and you can climb down and see another waterfall along the way. Normally you can hear Paradise Falls before you see it. We found there are two ways to get down below the falls. Follow the trail near the bluff line, and you'll come upon a rope to help you navigate the slick trail down to the creek. But we found an easier way that doesn't require ropes. Hike a few hundred more yards further downstream past the falls, and you'll find a break in the bluff line where you can scramble down. It is steep, but not as steep as the trail most people take and use the ropes. Once you get down to the creek, walk back upstream and you'll be below Paradise Falls, and the view is stunningly beautiful. The trail is 3 miles total with about 500 feet of elevation change, which is why I rated it moderately challenging. These are two more waterfalls in the Richland Creek wilderness near Falling Water and Six Finger Falls. There are numerous ways to hike to the falls. On our first attempt, while camping in Richland Creek Campground, we crossed the creek and took the left trail along Richland Creek. After about 2 miles, we reached a rock slide and we couldn't get past it. We turned around at that point, but didn't try to cross the creek here because of high water. There is another trail when you leave the campground that you can take, which takes you to Twin Falls first, and it's 2.2 miles. There you can cross the creek and take the trail downstream to Richland Falls. We didn't have time to do that on the camping trip, so we came back and tried a different trail. We came in on Searcy County Road 1 and took the trail from the top. This made the hike almost 6 miles with 800 feet of elevation change. This one is not for the faint of heart, and definitely not to be done without a map or GPS. The old road trace is hard to follow, as this isn't a marked trail and traffic is light. We didn't see another soul as we made this trek in February 2022. The trail more or less follows a drainage down to Big Devil's Fort, where you turn left downstream and follow the bluff to a spot you can scramble down to the creek. The climb down is steep, and close to the creek it gets slick, but once you get down alongside the creek it is a short trek to Twin Falls. This is an amazing twin waterfall that's about 19 feet tall and occurs where two streams come together. Cross the creek here and head downstream until you reach Richland Creek. Stay to the right and go upstream beside Richland Creek for about a quarter of a mile and you'll come to Richland Falls. Although Richland Falls is only around 6 feet tall, it is about 100 feet wide. It really is a sight to see when the water is running well and the falls span the entire creek. This is a tall waterfall that is very close to Six Finger Falls, again in the Richland Creek wilderness near Whit Springs, Arkansas. Driving on Falling Water Road, you'll cross a concrete bridge between Falling Water Falls and Six Finger Falls. Park across the bridge and walk back to the horse trail on your right as you cross the bridge. Follow the trail for about a quarter of a mile and you'll see a trail leading to the Falling Water Creek on your right and a drainage on your left. Walk out to the creek to see some interesting rock formations in the creek, then follow the short drainage up to Lower Horsetail Falls. It was just a trickle when we were there, so we didn't venture any further, but there's also an Upper Horsetail Falls if you want to climb around the bluff. You can also continue down the trail further, and you'll eventually come out on the opposite side of Six Finger Falls from the roadside. Bear Creek Canyon is located in the Ozark National Forest. This area is a waterfall lover's paradise. We viewed 6 different waterfalls within a few hundred yards of each other. The trailhead is located on Forest Road 1802 in the Ozark National Forest. From Sand Gap, Arkansas, still listed on some maps as Pelser, turn right onto State Highway 123 to the west. Approximately 4.4 miles west of Sand Gap, you'll see a forest road to the left. There isn't a traditional road sign on the highway, so you won't be looking for a small signpost close to the trees with 1802 on it. That's the road to the trailhead. About 2.2 miles from the highway there'll be a small parking area on the left, and a few yards further down the road there's a rutted road that leads into the forest on the right. There's a small sign there like the one on the highway that designates this road as 931798. This is where you want to begin your hike if you don't have a four-wheel drive vehicle. I will add that this hike was tougher for me than some other hikes we had taken. It's a little less than a mile down to the first fall on the trail, but the elevation change was noted as around 700 feet on my GPS. It is very steep and at times the trail gets narrow along the bluff line beside the creek, but if you love chasing waterfalls, this is the place you need to put on your bucket list. When you reach the creek, you can follow a faint trail to the right and see Sidewinder Falls. A little further along that trail will bring you to Baby Bear Falls. These are not tall waterfalls, but they radiate their own beauty just the same. Baby Bear Falls tumbles into a blue-green pool before continuing downstream to Sidewinder Falls. Sidewinder Falls twists down the rocks and runs under Swamp Falls, which you can see from Sidewinder Falls and is formed by the creek you follow on the way downhill. If you follow the trail back to Swamp Falls, you can cross the creek and follow a narrow trail along the side of Bear Creek. A short distance down this trail you will come upon the aptly named V-Slot Falls. This waterfall is called V-Slot because a large boulder is collapsed into the creek and the water is worn past on both sides, forming a V. A short distance further down this trail you can scramble down into the creek bed and backtrack along the creek to Long Pool Falls. This is a cascade that creates a long blue-green pool in the creek. At this point I also noticed an unnamed fall where water was cascading down the bluff on the opposite side of the creek. When you start back, the trail is quite steep on the ascent. Just take frequent breaks and have plenty of water with you. This is another waterfall that's named Twin Falls, but it's sometimes called Triple Falls. As you can see, when there's been rain in the area, the falls have 3 distinct flows of water that rush over the cliff. Twin Falls Trail is located just outside the camp or Boy Scout camp. Twin Falls sits in the Buffalo River Valley, just northeast of Ponca, Arkansas. To reach the falls, you take Highway 7 out of Harrison. Take a right off Highway 7 onto Highway 74 and look for Camp Orr Road. Camp Orr Road is approximately 6 miles from the turn onto Highway 74. The road becomes rough and very steep shortly after you leave the highway. When I say steep, I do mean steep. When there are signs along the road reminding you to stop and let your brakes cool, you know it's steep. The trail to the falls from the parking area is only a few hundred yards and is mostly level. The trail leads to a pool with the falls flashing in from the bluff above. The height of Twin Falls is approximately 50 feet. There is a side trail that you can take along the bluff that takes you to the top of the falls. You can walk along the creek above the falls and see a spring and other sights. To reach Sidewinder Falls, you take County Road 9 to the south off of State Highway 21 between Kingston and Ponca. The road to the area is fairly rough, so a high clearance vehicle is recommended. Sidewinder Falls is about 81 feet tall. It was a pleasant surprise when we got there to find a new gravel parking area marked with cables. The lot is level and in great shape. The trail is well marked from this spot and is fairly well used, so it shouldn't be a problem staying on the trail. Once you leave the parking lot, the trail is downhill for the most part. The first thing you will encounter is the trail intersecting the old trail coming down from the gate you passed on the road in. Stay to the left here and continue downhill. After a short distance, you will encounter an old home place that is in fairly decent condition considering they're all abandoned buildings. Continue down the trail a short distance and the trail will fork. The trail to the left leads to the top of the falls and the trail to the right descends to the bottom of the falls along the bluff line. You can walk behind the waterfall under a rock overhang that was almost certainly used by Native Americans for shelter when they inhabited this area. If you venture to the top of the falls, use caution. The rocks are well worn and can be slick, and there aren't any safety devices like rails present. This is a wild area, and carelessness can result in accidents. There you have our list of great waterfalls to hike in the Arkansas Ozarks. Let us know which is your favorite in the comments, and be sure and visit our website for more information about the Ozarks and places to visit at lostintheozarks.com. And as always, thanks for watching.